I am Jasmin Thomas. I am the founder of Ohana CBD, which is a CBD infused skincare line. And I'm just going to basically tell you through my story and my journey, the great highs and the awful lows, basically, of working in the cannabis industry. My diagnosis. So like a lot of people that are part of this industry and come into this industry, I entered it from a medical perspective. I was diagnosed with MS in 2015. So on the 1st of December 2015, I lost my hearing. Actually, sorry, take it back a little bit. Earlier that summer, I'd lost my hearing, and I wasn't quite sure what it was. I went for some tests. They were like, nothing wrong with your ear. It's all great. Go for a scan. Might be something to do with your brain. So I went for an MRI scan, and I was quite shocked that it came back, said that I had MS. So I had quite active MS. I've got quite a few lesions on my brain, and it was all moving very fast. Now, when I came to deciding on what medicine that I wanted to use, for various reasons, the medicine on offer to me wasn't really that appealing. Like Greg said, I don't know why they do this, but they just offer everyone chemo. Like, it's the most bizarre thing. So, like, I was 25, they were like, yeah, have chemo. And I was thinking, absolutely not. They offer you drugs which have a, 30% chance of giving you a thyroid problem for life, which you then have to have more medication for. And I was like, no, thank you. They then offered me some other drugs, and I was really, really not keen on taking anything. I was 25, I didn't want anything to impact on my fertility. There were so many reasons. So, and on the 2nd of December, I started a new job, and I was doing business development for a recruitment company, and they handed me the client GW Pharmaceuticals to look after. So I was like, cool, this is quite interesting. So the day after I was diagnosed, I was put straight into GW Pharma to do some business development work for them. So obviously there I learned about Sativex and how it was prescribed, what it was good for. It was, I'm very, very lucky as well. It's very, very socially, it's very accepted in my family. My granddad's a Rasta, so pretty much half my family has always consumed cannabis. We've always been aware of the benefits, and paired that with accepting from my family. I think my partner at the time had a hydroponic shop, so it was like from all corners of my life that it was saying, weed, weed, weed. So and I wasn't actually a recreational user before, but then I discovered a weed. So I started consuming cannabis, and it worked. It was so effective. So back in 2015, summer of 2016, I would get symptoms of the Lermit sign. So it's basically I had tremors and discomfort down my spinal cord. And I also get really uncomfortable legs and exhaustion, like fatigue and all these kind of symptoms that are quite common with MS. And literally when I consumed weed, it would go away within seconds. It's different for everyone, but for me, it was super, super effective. However, I had a job in the city. So one, I was going into work stoned, which they weren't too happy about, to be honest. And I stank of weed a lot of the time, which wasn't really that accepted. And to be fair, I think they were all really supportive though. They were like, yeah, it's fine, do what you want in your personal time, it's helping you out. That saying, the CEO of the company was my uncle, so that could have had some contribution to how accepting they actually was, because none of them wanted to get fired. But it was great. At the time, I was working with GW Pharmaceuticals. I was getting all this information from them. I had access to their pharmacovigilance team, the Q&A team, and I was basically, for a patient to really understand the medicine and how cannabis works for them, I had a really, really good introduction to that. I didn't just have to listen to my granddad being like, it's Irie, smoke it, you're going to be great. So I discovered weed. Now, obviously, I was at work all the time. The smell became a little bit of an issue, so I had to look at other ways of using it. One way that I started to use it was topical application. So I started using THC and CBD in balms, which I would then apply to my legs, spinal cord, my hips, which would get really tight. And again, it was really effective for me. So at this time, I am using the topicals, and it's really good. So I'm loving this, but I'm quite deep into the cannabis scene right now. I remember I went to Voltfars's, I don't even know where he's gone now, but I went to Voltfars's medical cannabis convention in Dublin in October 2016. It was great. I met Alistair and George, who used to work there, who are now running Hanway Associates. And from then I went to every convention possible for me to just build up my knowledge, basically. I really, really wanted to understand what I was taking, what it was doing. One, so me and my neurologist have been basically having 4 years of debates and arguments. So I really wanted to equip myself with the knowledge. So when I go to these, when I go to my appointments, they're not going to be there patronizing me, and, I'm going to have a really, really good argument as to why I'm using it. I should have said actually earlier as well, they wouldn't give me Sativex. This is before I even knew that much about it. So I was like, yeah, just give me the weed one. And they were like, no, you have to try 2 other drugs and they fail for you to be applicable to get Sativex, which I just think is like, okay, that's horrendous as well, but whatever, that's just the way it is. So I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to consume myself. So I did that, very, very open with them. They then put a warning sign on my medical document that said cannabis abuser. So I'm pretty pissed off at this point because I'm like, your medical documents, they can be opened if you have kids and social services can get involved and all this stuff. So I was like, I don't understand how something can be accessible to me if I'm nearly dead and this is the only thing that's going to help me, but you're not going to give it to me. You're going to let me consume unregulated black market cannabis. And anyway, so, we've had a lot of arguments, a lot of heated debates. So I wanted to equip myself with as much knowledge. So luckily for my mum, I've basically dragged her everywhere. We've been to Vegas, California, Barcelona, Germany, and Prague to basically educate ourselves on how this could help. So the highs of that one was I was using cannabis. It was great. The lows was going to work, smelling of cannabis, and working in bank is not accepted. So formulating from scratch. From there, obviously, I became encompassed by the industry. I knew it was an industry that I wanted to be a part of. I'd kind of, by this stage, when you kind of have this kind of illness, you start looking at your life. Going in on that central line, on the northern line every day, was not good for my condition. I was so stressed out, and I don't know if anyone's worked in recruitment or heard of recruitment companies. They're all assholes, bar me, but awful industry to work in. It's actually really good because it gives you a really good foundation of like business acumen, and it's translated so well into this. But they work you to the bone, and it's really hard. And if you're not in the office 8 till 8 every single day, then you're not going to cut it. So after 7 years of that, I was like pretty exhausted. So I wanted to start my own thing. So as topicals had helped me so much, I wanted to do something in the topical space. I also wanted to start a business that encompassed all my passions. So I think, I want to do something that could have a sustainability impact. That's something very important to me and my lifestyle. I'm 100% plant-based, so I wanted something that was vegan and that could offer people alternative. And also I think there was a big lack of educational piece. Like when I was diagnosed, I cut out all chemicals out of my life. And from one way that I did that was through my skincare routine. And the average woman through her skincare routine will apply over 150 chemicals every single day. And I think that is absolutely shocking. So when you're putting on your Nivea or Olay or any of these kind of, like L'Oreal type products, that's overwhelming your body with chemicals. So again, I felt like there was a big educational point on that I wanted to do. So then that brought me to the topical space. Formulating from scratch. So this was actually quite difficult because there is not a lot of evidence and clinical trials out there to tell you how much you should put into your products. So that is a real struggle because obviously it's completely, when you're medicating with cannabis, it is so personal. So I know someone with ADHD and high functioning autism. They can consume over a gram of cannabis a day and just be totally normal. Like, I didn't even actually know they were high, to be honest, until like 6 months after knowing them. And then I was like, oh, so how often do you medicate? And they were like, every day. And I'm like, but you're never high. And they're like, no, it just doesn't affect me. Whereas for me, I was super sensitive to all cannabinoids. So it's very different. So the lows of this is basically there is not enough evidence out there for a lot of people to know how they are, how they're measuring their ingredients and what can be put into a product to make it active and for it to work. Now, a high from this is that it's quite a small industry. Like, most people know everybody. Danny, I bump into you everywhere. Greg, I bump into you everywhere. Obviously, the Vault Fast guys that were speaking before, I bump into them everywhere. So it's a very, very small industry. Most of us know each other, and we'll see each other often. So a formulation scientist from America helped me out here, so that was great. So I had her input of being able to know of exactly what measurements I should put into my products. Instagram influencing. So I'm going around like a normal company now, setting up, doing all the normal things. It's not normal. It's not a normal industry to work in, and it can be very, very challenging. So one of the plus sides of this was that, you know, there is a buzz around it. Everyone's interested in knowing about it. Everyone wants more information. So on Instagram, you know, you put hashtag CBD, you're going to get a lot of likes, you're going to get a lot of engagement, you're going to get a lot of people looking into it. However, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, they're all American platforms where it is federally illegal. So you cannot do paid advertisement, you cannot do paid posts. So essentially you are going up against other companies with a lot smaller availability to you. So you cannot do any paid posts, any paid advertisement, which is actually really, really difficult when you're building a company. However, I think it's quite good because, one, it's hard. So a lot of people who aren't passionate about it and don't really care, they're just going to say, fuck it, can't be bothered, I'm not going to do it. So it kind of weeds out the people that can't really be bothered and just sort of saying, you know, I'm just going to jump on this because it's going to make me a load of money. Two, it forces you to be creative. I think this is a really interesting industry where your skill set is definitely pushed and you are forced to get creative and kind of really think outside of the box and think, where can I take this? How can I do it? And you don't have to do it the very basic way. Payment provider Purgatory. You know about this. I hear some noises. Good. This is interesting. Again, a really, really good point. People that are setting up businesses in this industry, it is hard. You have to find a payment provider that is going to process CBD or cannabis payments. That is not common. So if you set up on WordPress or Shopify or something like that, and you try and work with Stripe are going to shut you down. It was like maybe beginning of 2000, what are we in now, 2019? Beginning of 2018, I think we had an article published on, don't even want to say the online place where it was because it's not a great newspaper, but it was an online news article. And we had so many people come into our website, and after 3 orders, it just crashed because we didn't know what we know now. We were using Stripe, and they said absolutely not. PayPal shut us down pretty quickly as well. There are over 1,000 payment providers out there which you can use. There's only about 4 in Europe which will process CBD payments. These are extremely expensive, some want up to £10,000 in advance, and others, Stripe costs about 0.5 to 1%. CBD payment providers cost between 4 and 5%, so they're actually really, really expensive. So again, it's difficult, but if you put in the work that there are solutions out there. So it kind of brings it back to, you know, you can get there in the end, but you're just going to have to basically put in the work. Securing the bag. So this is about the money. So big buzz in the industry. I mean, I rarely get turned away for a meeting from a VC or an investor at the moment because they are so interested. They don't know what it's about. They don't know what it is. All they know that it's a prospect market that could make a load of money. So obviously, coming from a really personal background, I'm very, very careful about who we accept money from. You know, L'Oreal analysts have looked at the CBD market and said it's going to be the next biggest thing in skincare. So they were obviously really looking closely at these indie brands. For me personally, that doesn't work because they test on animals, and I'm completely against that. So actually getting money from the right people is very, very, very important in this industry. Also, it's changed. You know, I go to a lot of these conventions. Before, it was like 15 people. We all had a similar mindset. Now it's at 1,200 people, from lawyers, insurance people. It's turning into a massive boys' club as well. So, you know, as a woman, you're just getting outed out, which, again, another big problem in most industries. But we have to be aware of that and be considerate from the beginning. So there is a big buzz around it. People do want to give you their money. You have to be careful who you get it from. But there is also still fear. So people are fearful as to, is it a bubble? Is it going to burst? Should we really part with our money in a very, very grey market where people don't know what's going to happen? Legalization seems to be a very debated topic. Some people say 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. Then they're not sure, basically. So in this industry, it's a very interesting place to be as well. So this is just what we do, basically. It's not that. Building the family. So going off my point of securing the bag and getting investment and it becoming a boys' club, me and a lady called Jessica Steinberg, who's doing a PhD at Oxford, have started something called the Entourage Network. So we are cultivating a platform to engage and empower women into the legal cannabis industry. And I think, for me, this is so important for any industry I've worked in. This has always been a main focus of mine. When I was working in technology, from a recruitment perspective, all these banks have initiatives to get women in. They want to get women, in higher seats, etc. For one position, we would have 17 applicants. Out of those 17 applicants, 1 or 2 would be women. So it's really, really difficult. So when I came to this industry and I was working in a co-working space and I met one woman, Jessica, I was like, okay, you're going to be my friend now because there's some girly things that I want to talk about. And it's just surrounded by men. And I just think it's so important. It's a nascent industry. We're at the very, very early stages. And one of the great things about it is we have the ability to really dictate how we build this industry. We've got the ability to set the standards, and there is no history saying, this is going to be run by men. In America, where it's obviously a lot more advanced than us, pre-legalization, they had 36% women holding C-level positions or above. When legalization came into play, that went down to 23%. So legalization comes in, 23% women are holding C-level positions and above. 2 years post legalization, that is down at 12%. So we want to make sure that in the UK and Europe, that's not the same. We can do better. We have a really, really good opportunity to create equality for women and to really get women at the forefront of this industry. Women are creative and they're often caregivers, and it suits very, very well into the nature of this industry. So building the family is really important to us. I'm just going to check that I'm saying the right things right now, because I'm not sure. Yeah. So how we do this, quickly going back to Entourage Network, actually, we hold monthly events. So they are on all different topics. In June, we did one called Investing in Women. So it's basically putting together a platform basically for women to engage with each other, share skill sets, and know how to go about building their business from other women who have done very well in the industry already. Last month, we did Patients and Policy Change. So it's basically always bringing it back to the patients at the end of the day, because it's how the industry got started and the people at grassroots that are making the difference for everyone to have these opportunities. Next month, our event is it's a collaboration with a law firm. So it's basically taking people through the laws and regulations of the industry and making sure that women know what they're doing is correct from the beginning and what they're doing is lawful as well. So from a Ohana perspective, what we do and what we think is really important is online education. There is still a massive educational piece to be done. I think, I won't bore you with it, but most people in the room know what THC is, what CBD is, what other cannabinoids are. There is still a really, really big lack of understanding as to what it is. For example, my mother-in-law's got arthritis. She's got quite a few issues. And we've tried to get her to take THC. She doesn't really like it that much, and CBD, and she just doesn't know what it is, and she's not open to trying it because there's a complete lack of education. So I think that, online education is extremely important to us, making sure that everybody understands exactly what it is, what they're doing, and just being educated. I think I had to go through, I went to 5 different countries. I went to like 10 different conventions. I was in a very rare position where I had the chance to sit down with GW Pharma. Not every patient and not every person has the access to that information. And I think that education is the biggest thing and really important in this industry. and in-person connections. In summary, it's very, very difficult. It's a really challenging industry to work in. There is no blueprint. We don't know what's going to happen, and we don't know, it could change. The legal landscape is changing all the time. For cosmetics, it's a bit different, but, if you're going from a sublingual's point of view, it's, the FSA are coming down now and saying, the food regulations have to change. So there's a lot of challenges always coming up, and we don't really know. It's kind of exciting, though. You're just kind of like, wake up and think, what's going to happen today? Am I still going to have a business? Am I not? Who knows? It's interesting. I would say it's definitely worth it. If you're passionate about being in this industry, and if you're passionate about working with people in the industry, then I think it is a brilliant place to be. For me, in my old job, all I did all day was talk about weed, and all I wanted to do was talk about weed, and now all I do is talk about weed. So I basically... For me, I needed to create a platform where I could personally exercise my business acumen and what I had known and what I do love doing, because I love working. And I had to apply to something that I was very passionate about, and that was something that, I wouldn't mind doing 7 days a week. And hopefully I can continue for working 7 days a week for however long. So basically, the lows, just to recap, the lows are stigma. You're going to smell of weed, you're going to get stigma, but whatever. Lack of research on dosage because of the laws. Ads don't work. There's financial regulation issues that you're going to come across. Lots of hype, lots of noise. Who knows where that's going to go, basically. We don't make any medicinal claims, of course, but it's very, very difficult to talk about the benefits. One part is if you own a business in this industry, you are going to get sick people calling you and asking you for advice. And it is a very, very difficult thing to manage, because on one hand, you want to share your experience and how you've come about to be able to. I'm like 5 years into being diagnosed with MS. I haven't taken one pharmaceutical drug, and I manage it solely through my diet, my lifestyle, and cannabis. So that is a story that I want to share and that I want to tell with people. It's very, very difficult to do that, and there's a lot of legal implications. So that's very, very difficult. There are some interesting people in this industry as well. So I don't actually know what, to be fair, my business partner did that. I would actually put that in the middle if I did it myself. But you do just get like the most interesting people, especially at our Entourage Networks. We'll just get someone asking the most random, absurd question, which has no relevance to what we're doing. I remember once we had an all-female panel, we had literally like 2 guys in the audience, and one of them put up the hand to ask a question and said, "What do you think of the video that's going viral of the babysitter giving a 5-year-old a spliff?" And we were just like, why are you asking this question? It's very, very frustrating, but interesting people. I think that definitely sits in the middle. Very, very interesting. The highs, you can set the standards, like I said. So, us as business owners, we are setting the standards of what we think should be acceptable. There is a company called Day out there, which is the CBD tampon company. What they're doing is amazing. They are setting the standards of how a tampon should actually be made. They have gone to all the regulatory bodies and said, we want to make this as a medical device. A woman sometimes puts this tampon into them hours at a time, 5 days a month for, I don't even know how many years, like 40 years or something like that, or probably even longer, depends what you're like. But there is no medical device guidelines, there's no regulations, there is no testing. I went to their dinners the other day, so I'm regurgitating all the information I learned. But there's no testing on the water that's used in these. So being that your vagina is one of the most absorbable parts of your body, it is insane that there is absolutely no testing, no regulation, and no guidelines, and it will not be considered as a medical device. So I think companies like that are really setting the standards are really, really positive. It's a positive for the industry, it's also a positive for women's health, so I think that's great. The chance to be creative is really good. I have stepped out of my old job where I wasn't really learning anything new. Once you know it, and it's just the same old shit every day. Is offering me the chance to be very, very creative. Some of the skills that I've brought out or that I've used, I didn't even really know that I had. And I feel like even if I do decide to leave the industry one day or do something different, I have built up a really, really good, interesting skill set, which I can easily apply to other industries, and also definitely taking me out of my box of comfort and thinking, how would I approach it? I actually think that has positive implications on your business as well, because you are forced to do something different than all other companies that are doing. Most people, they will get the product, they will put £1,000 worth of advertising behind it, and they'll just basically throw it to the wall and hope it sticks. In this industry, you cannot do that. You can work, and this is the most important thing, you work alongside compassionate people. A lot of the business owners in this industry are coming from a place of where they've got an illness, or where they've got, some sort of medical condition that's forced them to gain this knowledge and to come into this space. And you do meet the most compassionate people. I think for me personally, Danny's been a great one of them. I'm just going to big her up before she gets on stage, but she has been really, really great on that side. And you basically just meet people that have the same ideologies and views as you, and have the same approach to medicine, and they make you feel accepted, and it's really, really comfortable conversations to have. And I think you can really make a difference as well, even if it's just sharing your story with one person that learns something, or if it's one person that can see what you're doing is good and they want to do something different. I think that's all that matters. And I think, it's just a really, really powerful place to be. So I can only share my personal journey, and that are my highs and lows of working in the industry. And I hope you take something from it, and I'll be around if you want to ask any questions. Thank you so much.